The man stepped forward and told the queen, "Do not consume that food." The hall fell silent. Every eye in the grand chamber turned toward Jake Morrison, the human diplomat who had just committed what might be the greatest breach of protocol in Valeth history. The crystalline walls of the royal palace seemed to pulse with the collective shock of 300 alien dignitaries. Queen Salira, her forearms frozen mid-reach toward the ceremonial dish, stared at him with her large amber eyes. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his face calm. His translator unit buzzed softly at his collar, converting his words into the melodic tones of the Valeth language. He had maybe 10 seconds before the royal guards tackled him to the floor. Commander Lisa Grant, standing 3 feet behind him, whispered urgently through their private comm link, "Jake, what are you doing? We talked about this. No interruptions during the feast." The feast. Right. The ceremony of first consumption, where the queen would taste the offerings from 100 worlds seeking trade agreements with the Valeth Empire. Earth desperately needed this alliance. The journey here had taken 8 months, millions of credits. The hope of an entire planet riding on making a good impression, and Jake had just ruined it in 5 words. But he had seen something the others missed. The dish before Queen Solara, presented by the Carthex delegation, contained a delicate arrangement of what looked like purple flowers floating in amber liquid. Beautiful, elegant, and absolutely lethal to consume in this combination, not lethal to Valeth physiology. Not to Carthex. Not to any of the species gathered in this hall. But the queen had recently undergone the bonding, a ceremonial procedure where she had accepted human genetic material to symbolize the potential alliance between their species. It was supposed to be purely symbolic, a gesture of goodwill. The human DNA was meant to be dormant, inactive. But Jake had studied xenobiology for 15 years. He knew what nobody else in this room seemed to understand. The bonding changed things. It made her vulnerable to the same poisons that would kill a human. The purple flowers were nexus blooms. The amber liquid was Carthy nectar. Separately, they were delicacies prized across a dozen systems. Together, they created a compound that would stop a human heart in less than 30 seconds. Security Chief Rack stepped forward, his scaled hands moving toward the plasma weapon at his hip. "Human, you will explain yourself immediately, or you will be removed from this chamber." Jake raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapons. "Your Majesty," he said, directing his words to the Queen. 3 months ago, you underwent the bonding ceremony. You accepted human genetic markers as a sign of friendship between our peoples." The Queen's expression shifted from shock to interest. She lowered her arms slightly. "I did. It was a great honor to symbolize our potential unity." Jake took a careful breath. "That bonding, while largely symbolic, created changes in your biochemistry. Small changes, but enough to make you susceptible to certain compound reactions that would not affect a pure Valeth. The dish before you contains nexus blooms and Carthy nectar. Combined, they create diaxothal. For any full Valeth, this is harmless. But for you, after the bonding, it would be fatal within seconds." The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. The Carthex ambassador, a towering figure with iridescent skin, surged forward. "This is an outrageous accusation. Our gift is prepared according to ancient tradition. This human seeks to undermine our standing with false claims." Queen Solera held up one hand, and the room fell silent again. She commanded respect with the smallest gestures, a trait Jake admired. "Bring me a bioscanner," she said quietly. A medical attendant rushed forward with a portable device. The Queen allowed the scan, and the attendant's face went pale, his skin shifting to a deep purple that Jake had learned indicated distress in their species. "Your Majesty, the human is correct. Your biochemistry shows the markers. If you had consumed this, the reaction would have been immediate and catastrophic." The Carthex ambassador stammered, clearly shocked. This was not intentional. "We had no knowledge of this. Our researchers prepared the traditional offering. We would never seek to harm the Queen." Jake believed him. The assassination attempt, if that was what this was, had been subtle, almost invisible. Someone had known about the bonding and its effects. Someone had known the Queen would be presented with this specific combination. Someone had planned this very carefully. But who? Queen Solera stood, her full height, impressive even by Valeth standards. She looked at Jake with an expression he could not quite read. "You have saved my life, human. You have my gratitude and the gratitude of my people. But now we face a greater question. If you are correct about the danger, and clearly you are, then someone in this hall knew what would happen. Someone wanted me dead." She turned to address the assembled delegates. "This feast is concluded. Security will investigate every dish, every delegation, every detail of how this offering came to be placed before me. No one leaves this palace until we have answers." Jake felt Lisa's hand on his shoulder. "Good work," she whispered. "Though next time maybe give me a heads up before you accuse someone of attempted assassination in front of 300 witnesses." He managed a weak smile. "Next time, I'll send a memo." But even as he spoke, Jake's mind was racing. The bonding ceremony had been proposed by the Valeth themselves. The guest list for this feast had been planned months in advance. The Carthex had prepared their offering according to tradition. Everything looked like coincidence, but Jake did not believe in coincidences, not when they lined up this perfectly. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone who understood human biology well enough to predict the interaction. Someone who had access to the ceremony protocols and the feast preparations. Someone who wanted Queen Solera dead and humanity blamed for the failure to protect her. The question was why, and more importantly, were they planning to try again? Queen Solera approached Jake directly, her guards tense but allowing it. "What is your name, human?" "Jake Morrison, Your Majesty, xenobiologist assigned to the diplomatic mission." She studied him for a long moment. "You will work with my security teams, Jake Morrison?" "We will find who planned this, and we will ensure they face justice." He nodded. "I'm at your service, Your Majesty." As the Queen turned to give orders to her staff, Jake caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. Across the hall, partially hidden behind a pillar, one of the Valeth advisors was watching him. The advisor's skin had shifted to a pale gray, an unusual color, and in his eyes Jake saw something that did not belong there. Fear. Not fear of assassination or chaos. Fear of discovery, fear that someone had noticed something they should not have noticed. Jake memorized the advisor's face. He would need to investigate carefully, quietly. Because if his suspicion was right, the threat to Queen Solara was far from over, and the conspiracy went deeper than anyone realized. The hall began to empty slowly, delegates being escorted to secure rooms by guards. Jake remained near the Queen, his mind already working through the puzzle pieces. The bonding ceremony, the feast timing, the specific combination of ingredients, the advisor's reaction. Everything pointed to a plan that had been in motion for months, and Jake had just made himself the primary obstacle to that plan, which meant he had also just made himself a target. Lisa moved closer, her hand resting on the weapon at her side. "We need to get you somewhere safe." Jake shook his head. "Safe is a relative. Whoever planned this is still here." "Still dangerous. We need answers more than we need safety." She sighed. "You always were terrible at self-preservation." He grinned, despite the tension. "It's a human trait. We're stubborn like that." The Queen's voice rang out across the chamber. "All delegates will remain in the palace complex until further notice. This is not a request. Security Chief Rax will coordinate the investigation, and Jake Morrison will assist as my personal advisor on human-related matters." Jake felt the weight of that announcement. Personal advisor to an alien queen. Not exactly what he had signed up for when he joined the diplomatic mission. But then again, nothing about first contact had gone the way anyone expected. As the last of the delegates filed out, Jake took one more look at the ceremonial dish that had nearly killed the Queen. The Nexus blooms had already started to wilt, their purple petals turning black. The Carthy nectar had separated, creating an oily sheen on the surface, beautiful and deadly. Just like this whole situation. He turned to follow the Queen and her security detail, his mind already racing ahead to the next problem. Because in saving the Queen's life, he had opened a door that someone very powerful had wanted to keep closed, and now he would have to see what lay on the other side, even if it meant walking straight into danger. After all, he thought, that's what humans did best. They walked into danger and found a way to survive. It was what made Earth a death world. It was what made humans so resilient, and it might just be what saved an entire empire from collapsing into chaos. The game had begun, and Jake Morrison was all in. The medical wing of the palace was a maze of crystalline corridors and soft blue lighting designed to promote healing among the Valeth people. Jake followed Security Chief Rex through the passages, noting every detail, the placement of guards, the security protocols at each checkpoint, the way the staff moved with practiced efficiency. Everything here spoke of a civilization that valued order and structure. The Valeth had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 3,000 years without major conflict. They had built their empire on trade, diplomacy, and careful planning. War was foreign to them, assassination even more so, which made the attempt on Queen Solara's life all the more disturbing. Vrex stopped outside a private laboratory, his scales reflecting the blue light in patterns Jake had learned to recognize as concentration. The toxicology team has analyzed the dish. Your assessment was correct. The combination would have been fatal to the Queen within 40 seconds of consumption. We have detained the Carthex ambassador and his entire delegation for questioning. Jake frowned. I don't think they knew. The ambassador's shock was genuine. His skin patterns showed authentic surprise, not the controlled deception of someone caught in a plot. Vrak's head tilted in the Valeth gesture of consideration. You understand our physiological responses? We have been told humans struggle with reading Valeth emotional displays. I've made it my business to learn. Jake moved closer to the transparent wall that separated them from the lab. Biology is universal, chemistry is universal. The way beings respond to stress, fear, joy, those are patterns that cross species boundaries. You just have to know what to look for. Inside the lab, 3 Valeth scientists were running tests on samples from the ceremonial dish. Their movements were precise, methodical. Jake watched them work, his mind cataloging details. Who prepared the dish? He asked. Vrax pulled up a holographic display from his wrist unit. The Carthex delegation brought their own food preparation team. This is standard protocol for ceremonial feasts. Each delegation provides their traditional offering using their own methods. The palace staff only provides the space and basic supplies. Jake studied the display, noting the list of names. Can I see the preparation logs? Who had access to the ingredients? When were they combined? The security chief pulled up additional files. The Nexus blooms were delivered to the Carthex preparation area 6 hours before the feast. The Carthy nectar arrived 3 hours later. Both came from the palace's central supply, which sources ingredients from approved vendors across the empire. Jake felt something click in his mind. So the palace provided the ingredients? The Carthex team just prepared them according to their traditional methods. Correct. It is how we ensure quality and prevent, Vrax paused, considering his words, unfortunate accidents. But this wasn't an accident. Jake turned to face the security chief directly. Someone knew the Carthex would request these specific ingredients for their traditional dish. Someone knew the Queen had undergone the bonding ceremony. Someone knew those 2 facts together would create a lethal situation. And someone made sure both ingredients were available and assigned to the Carthex delegation. Vrak's skin shifted to a deeper blue, indicating concern. You suggest the conspiracy originated from within the palace supply chain. I suggest the conspiracy was designed to look like an accident, or at worst an attack by a foreign delegation. Jake began pacing, his mind working through the scenario. Think about it. If the Queen had died, who would have been blamed? The Carthex. Relations between your empire and theirs would have shattered. Other species would have questioned the safety of diplomatic relations with the Valeth. Your entire network of alliances could have destabilized. And humanity would have been implicated as well, Vrax added quietly. The Queen accepted the bonding as a gesture toward your people. If it led to her death, Earth would be seen as bringing danger to our realm. Exactly. Jake stopped pacing. This wasn't just about killing the Queen. It was about creating chaos, about undermining everything she's built. Someone wants to see the Empire fall apart. The security chief was silent for a long moment. That is a serious accusation. The kind of planning you describe would require resources, access, and time. It would require someone close to the throne. Someone we trust. Jake met his eyes. I know. That's what makes it so dangerous. A soft chime interrupted them. Vrax checked his wrist unit, and his skin shifted to an alarmed orange. The Queen requests your presence immediately. There has been another incident. They moved quickly through the corridors, half running. Jake's human legs struggled to keep up with Vrax's longer strides, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Another incident meant the threat was still active. Meant whoever was behind this wasn't waiting to regroup. They arrived at the royal chambers to find guards posted at every entrance. Inside, Queen Solera stood near a large window overlooking the palace gardens. Lisa was already there, along with several Valeth advisors. And on the floor, twitching in obvious distress, was one of the Queen's personal attendants. Medical teams are on their way, Lisa said as Jake entered. She collapsed 10 minutes ago, started convulsing. The doctors think it's poison. Jake knelt beside the attendant, careful not to touch her directly. Her skin had turned a mottled gray and her breathing was shallow. What was she doing before this happened? She was testing my evening meal, Queen Solara said quietly. It is protocol. All my food is tested by attendants before I consume it, a safety measure that has been in place for centuries. Jake looked up sharply. So this poison was meant for you? Again, it would seem so, the Queen replied. But the question remains, how did it get into my private chambers? This food was prepared by my personal kitchen staff, people I have known for years, people I trust. Jake stood and moved to examine the meal in question. It was a simple dish by Valeth standards, a protein blend with mineral supplements designed for the Queen's specific nutritional needs. He carefully lifted the container, noting its seal was intact. Where exactly does this food come from? One of the advisors stepped forward, an older Valeth named Kelris. The ingredients are sourced from the royal gardens and processed in the secure kitchen facility. Only senior staff with decades of service are allowed access. The preparation follows exact protocols established by the royal physicians. Jake turned the container in his hands, examining it from every angle. And how is it delivered to the Queen's chambers? Kelris's skin flickered with irritation at the questioning. A dedicated courier brings it directly from the kitchen. The courier is scanned at multiple checkpoints. The container is sealed. There is no opportunity for contamination. But there was. Jake pointed to a small port on the side of the container. This is a ventilation system, right? To keep the food fresh during transport? Yes. All containers have them. It allows proper air circulation while maintaining the seal. Jake pulled out his personal scanner, a human device that Lisa had insisted he carry. He ran it over the ventilation port and watched the readings spike. There's residue here. Something was introduced through this port. Something small enough to pass through the ventilation holes, but potent enough to contaminate the entire meal. The medical team arrived and immediately began treating the convulsing attendant. Jake stepped back to give them room, his mind racing. 2 attempts in less than 4 hours, both using different methods, both designed to avoid direct detection. Whoever was behind this was sophisticated, patient, and had intimate knowledge of palace security. Queen Solera moved to stand beside him. You are thinking loudly, Jake Morrison. I can see it in your face. Humans are not as skilled at hiding their thoughts as they believe. He managed a tight smile. Sorry, Your Majesty. Just trying to piece this together. Share your thoughts. You have earned that right. Jake glanced at the advisors, then back at the Queen. He chose his words carefully. Both attempts used methods that exploit normal palace procedures. The first relied on traditional diplomatic protocols. The second used the food safety system itself. That suggests someone who understands these systems intimately. Someone who has had time to study them and find the weaknesses. You believe the threat comes from within my own court, the Queen said. It was not a question. I believe whoever is doing this has help from inside, whether they know they're helping or not. One of the advisors, a younger Valeth named Pireth, spoke up. That is impossible. Everyone in the Queen's inner circle has been vetted through generations of service. Our families have served the throne for centuries. To suggest one of us would betray that trust is... He paused, searching for the word. Inconceivable. A month ago, I would have said it was inconceivable that a human would walk in an alien world and stop an assassination. But here we are. The attendant on the floor had stopped convulsing. The medical team worked quickly, administering treatments that Jake did not fully understand, but recognized as advanced. One of the doctors looked up at the Queen. She will survive. But it was close. Another few minutes and the damage would have been irreversible. Relief flooded through Jake. At least they had saved one life today. But the pattern was clear now. Someone was escalating. 2 attempts in quick succession meant they were either desperate or confident. Maybe both. Your Majesty, Jake said, turning to face Queen Solera directly. I need to ask you something. Who knew about the bonding ceremony before it happened? Who helped plan it? The Queen's expression grew thoughtful. The ceremony was proposed by my chief advisor, Vorin. He suggested it as a way to strengthen the symbolic connection between our peoples. The ritual itself was designed by the royal physicians in consultation with your diplomatic team. Perhaps 20 individuals knew the full details. Jake filed that away. And who knew you would attend the feast today? Who knew which delegates would be presenting offerings? That information was more widely known. The feast schedules prepared weeks in advance. All the delegations were informed of their presentation times. My entire court knew I would be there. So the first attempt could have been planned by anyone with access to basic palace information, Jake mused. But the second attempt, poisoning your personal meal, that required much more specific knowledge. Lisa stepped forward. We need to narrow down the suspect list. Focus on who had the means and opportunity for the second attack. That will give us a shorter list. Agreed, Vrax said. I will review all access logs for the kitchen facility and courier routes. We will also interview every staff member who touched the Queen's meal today. Jake nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the advisor he had seen in the hall, the one whose fear had seemed so out of place. What was his name? He turned to Kelris. The advisors in the Great Hall during the feast, I need a complete list of who was present. Kelris pulled up a holographic display. Here. All 27 members of the Royal Advisory Council were in attendance, as is customary for major diplomatic events. Jake scanned the list, looking for anything that stood out. Wait, this advisor, Marin. Tell me about him. Kelris's skin shifted slightly. Marin is a junior advisor. He handles logistics and supply coordination. He has been with the palace for 8 years. 8 years. Jake looked up. So he would have detailed knowledge of food supply chains, ingredient sourcing, and delivery protocols. Yes, but Marin is... Kelris hesitated. He is barely more than an assistant. He does not make policy. He simply ensures things run smoothly. Sometimes the people who make things run smoothly are the ones who know exactly how to make things fall apart, Jake said quietly. Queen Solara placed one of her hands on Jake's shoulder. You suspect this Marin? I suspect someone used their position to manipulate the supply chain. Whether that's Marin or someone else, I don't know yet, but we need to find out quickly. Because if I'm right, they're not going to stop. They've already tried twice. They're going to try again. The room fell silent. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Somewhere in this palace, someone was planning another attempt on the Queen's life, and time was running out to stop them. Lisa moved closer to Jake. What do you need? He thought for a moment. Access to all supply records for the past 3 months, personnel files for everyone who works in food preparation and delivery. And I need to talk to the Carthex delegation. If someone manipulated them, they might have noticed something unusual. Rack stepped forward. I will arrange all of this. But Jake Morrison, you must understand. If you are wrong about Marin or anyone else you investigate, it could create significant problems. Accusations without proof can be as damaging as the assassination attempts themselves. Jake met the security chief's gaze. I understand. But doing nothing guarantees the Queen dies. I'd rather make mistakes trying to save her than stand by and watch it happen. The Queen's 4 hands moved in a gesture Jake had learned meant gratitude and respect. You honor us with your dedication. Very well. You have my full authority to investigate as you see fit. Rax will provide whatever resources you need. But be careful. Whoever is behind this has already shown they are willing to kill. They will not hesitate to add you to their list of targets. I'll keep that in mind, Your Majesty. As the group began to disperse, each moving to their assigned tasks, Jake caught Lisa's arm. I need you to do something for me. This is going to be dangerous, isn't it? Probably. He pulled her aside, speaking quietly. I need you to watch the advisors. All of them. Pay attention to who talks to who seems nervous, who avoids certain areas of the palace. We're looking for patterns, unusual behavior, anything that doesn't fit. You think it's more than just Marin? I think this is bigger than one junior advisor. Someone with more power has to be involved. Marin might be the tool, but someone else is wielding it. Lisa nodded slowly. All right. I'll coordinate with our security team. We'll set up discreet surveillance. Be careful. If they realize we're watching, they might accelerate their plans. She smiled grimly. Careful is my middle name. Jake watched her go, then turned back to the window overlooking the gardens. The sun was setting over the Valith capital, painting the crystalline structures in shades of orange and purple. It was beautiful, peaceful, the kind of place where assassination and conspiracy seemed impossible. But Earth had taught humans a harsh lesson. Beauty and danger often came together. The most peaceful-looking creatures could be the most deadly. The calmest waters could hide the strongest currents. And somewhere, in this beautiful palace, someone was planning murder. Jake pulled out his scanner and checked the readings again from the ventilation port. The residue was synthetic, not natural. That meant whoever made the poison had access to sophisticated chemical synthesis equipment, not something you could hide in a small space. They would need a lab, or at least a well-equipped workshop. He made a mental note to ask Vrax about lab facilities in the palace. Then he started walking. He had work to do, files to review, people to question, and somewhere in all that data he would find the pattern. The connection, the proof they needed. Because that was what humans did. They solved problems. They found answers. They refused to give up even when the odds were against them. Earth had made them that way. A planet where everything wanted to kill you taught you to be observant, persistent, and creative. Those traits had helped humanity survive ice ages, predators, diseases, and their own worst impulses. Now those same traits might just save an alien queen and prevent an empire from collapsing into chaos. Jake allowed himself a small smile. Not bad for a xenobiologist who just wanted to study interesting life forms. But then again, life had a way of throwing curveballs, and humans had a way of hitting them out of the park. He headed toward the records room, his mind already composing the list of questions he needed answered. Somewhere in the palace's vast database of supply records and personnel files was the key to this whole conspiracy. He just had to find it before someone tried to kill Queen Solara a third time. And he would find it, because failure was not an option, not when lives were at stake. Not when the future of human-Valith relations hung in the balance, not when everything they had worked for could crumble in an instant. The hunt was on, and Jake Morrison was not about to let the prey escape. The records room was exactly what Jake expected from a civilization that valued order and precision. Rows of crystalline data storage units lined the walls, each one glowing softly with encoded information. A single Valith archivist sat at a central console, her skin a calm green that indicated contentment with her solitary work. She looked up as Jake entered, her large eyes reflecting surprise. The archives are not typically open to visitors at this hour, especially not human visitors. Jake showed her the authorization token Vrax had provided. I'm here on direct orders from Queen Solara. I need access to supply records and personnel files. The archivist's skin shifted to a more formal blue as she processed the credentials. She gestured to a secondary console. Everything is organized by category and date. What specifically are you looking for? 3 months of supply records. Everything that came through the palace procurement system. Focus on food ingredients, chemical supplies, and anything that could be used to create toxins. Her eyes widened slightly. This is related to the attempts on the Queen's life. It is. Jake sat down at the console, his fingers moving over the holographic interface. The controls were designed for Valith hands, with 4 input points instead of 2, but he had practiced enough to manage. Can you show me how to cross-reference suppliers with palace personnel? The archivist moved beside him, her movements graceful. Here. If you input a personnel ID, the system will show you every supply request they have authorized or handled. It is used primarily for accounting purposes. Perfect. Jake pulled up the file on Marin, the junior advisor he had spotted in the Great Hall. Let's start here. The data began flowing across the screen. Marin had indeed handled numerous supply requests over the past 3 months. Food ingredients, maintenance supplies, ceremonial items for diplomatic functions. Everything looked routine at first glance, but Jake had learned to look deeper than first glances. Can you filter this by unusual requests? Things that don't match typical patterns? The archivist worked the controls, and the list narrowed. Here, these items were requested outside normal procurement cycles. Most supply requests follow predictable schedules. These were, she paused, exceptions. Jake leaned forward, scanning the filtered list. There. 2 months ago, Marin had requested a specific chemical compound used in food preservation. Nothing unusual about that, except for the quantity. He ordered 10 times the normal amount. The archivist checked her records. That is odd. There were no large events scheduled that would require additional preservation supplies. And the excess was never returned or recorded as waste. So where did it go? Jake pulled up another screen. Can you track if this compound was used in any meals or storage? She worked quietly for several minutes, her skin shifting through various shades as she concentrated. I cannot find any record of it being used in food preparation. According to inventory logs, it went into general storage, but she frowned. The storage logs show it being withdrawn a week later for routine use. Signed out by kitchen staff. Names? She pulled up the signatures. 3 different kitchen workers withdrew portions of the compound on different days. All routine withdrawals for food preservation. Jake felt his instincts prickling. Can you show me those workers' schedules? Where were they when the withdrawals happened? More data flowed across the screen. The archivist's skin turned a disturbed purple. This is impossible. According to duty rosters, all 3 workers were assigned to other areas of the palace during these withdrawal times. They could not have been in the storage facility. Someone falsified the records, Jake said quietly. Someone used their credentials to access the compound and made it look like routine kitchen business. But who would have the ability to do that? The archivist's distress was evident. Our system is designed to prevent exactly this kind of manipulation. Someone with administrative access. Someone who understands how the system works. Jake turned back to Marin's file. What level of access does a junior advisor have? Limited access to supply records. They can request items and track deliveries, but they cannot alter logs or manipulate credentials. So Marin couldn't have done this alone, even if he wanted to. Jake leaned back in his chair, thinking. He would need help from someone with higher clearance. Someone in IT security or records management. Or someone in the royal physician's office, the archivist said quietly. They have elevated access because they need to monitor the Queen's dietary and medical supplies closely. Jake's attention sharpened. How many people work in the royal physician's office? The head physician and 4 assistants. All have been with the palace for at least 15 years. Can you pull up their access logs for the same time period? The archivist hesitated. That is sensitive information. Even with the Queen's authorization, accessing medical personnel records requires additional approval. Jake stood and pulled out his comm unit. Then let's get that approval. He contacted Vrax directly. I need access to royal physician personnel and system logs. It's urgent. The security chief's voice came through with a note of concern. The physicians? You suspect medical staff? I suspect someone used their access privileges to manipulate supply records. If I'm right, we'll find the connection. If I'm wrong, we'll eliminate them as suspects and move on. A pause. I will have the authorization sent to the archives within 5 minutes. Jake closed the comm and turned back to the archivist. While we wait, can you show me something else? The bonding ceremony that Queen Solera underwent? Who provided the technical specifications for the procedure? She pulled up another set of files. The ceremony was designed by head physician Torvak in consultation with human medical experts from your diplomatic mission. The specific genetic material and integration method were determined based on compatibility studies, and Torvak would have known exactly how the bonding would affect the Queen's biochemistry. Of course, that is his responsibility. The authorization came through, and the archivist's console chimed softly. She pulled up the new files, and Jake began scanning through months of medical office activities. Torvak's schedule was filled with routine examinations, staff meetings, and consultations. Nothing unusual, but then Jake noticed something. 3 weeks after the bonding ceremony, Torvak had made an unusual system query. He had accessed detailed records about human poison susceptibilities. The query was logged as research for compatibility studies, but the timing bothered Jake. Why would he need to research human poisons 3 weeks after the ceremony? Jake asked. The archivist studied the entry. Perhaps he was concerned about potential complications. Medical staff often conduct follow-up research after new procedures. Maybe. But Jake's instincts were screaming that this was important. Can you see what specific information he accessed? The archivist pulled up the detailed query logs. He searched for information about compound reactions, specifically how certain alien compounds might interact with human biology. And her skin shifted to an alarmed orange. He accessed data about nexus blooms in Carthy nectar. Jake felt ice in his veins. When exactly did he access this information? She checked the timestamp. 6 weeks before the feast. Almost immediately after learning about the planned diplomatic event, so Torvak knew about the poison combination weeks before it was served to the Queen. Jake stood, his mind racing. He knew because he researched it. He knew because he was looking for exactly this kind of interaction. But why would the head physician want to harm the Queen? The archivist's confusion was evident. He has served her for 30 years. His entire career has been dedicated to her health. That's the question, isn't it? Jake pulled up more files. Who else was involved in the bonding ceremony? Who assisted Torvak? His senior assistant, Valana? She handles most of the technical preparations for royal medical procedures. Jake found Valana's file and began cross-referencing her activities with Marin's supply requests and the mysterious chemical compound. And there it was. 3 days after Marin's unusual order, Valana had filed a maintenance request for her personal laboratory equipment. Nothing unusual about that except one detail jumped out. She requested cleaning supplies for chemical synthesis equipment, Jake said slowly. Equipment that, according to her standard duties, she doesn't normally use. The archivist pulled up technical specifications. You are correct. Valana's primary work involves biological analysis and medical diagnostics. Chemical synthesis is not part of her typical responsibilities, but it would be necessary if you wanted to create a custom poison. Jake felt the pieces clicking together. Marin orders the base compound. Someone manipulates the records to make it disappear. Valana uses synthesis equipment to create the actual poison, and Torvak provides the medical knowledge to make it specifically lethal to the Queen after the bonding. The conspiracy involved all 3 of them, the archivist whispered. But what about the delivery? How did the poison get into the Queen's food? Jake pulled up the courier records for the Queen's meal delivery. There had to be something. The courier was a longtime palace employee with an impeccable record. But when Jake checked the route logs, he found another anomaly. The courier made an unscheduled stop, he said.
Right here.
He pointed to a timestamp in the data. He deviated from the standard route for 3 minutes. The log says it was due to corridor maintenance forcing a detour. I can check maintenance schedules. The archivist worked quickly. There was no maintenance scheduled for that corridor on that day, so the courier either lied about the detour or someone manipulated him into making it. Jake enhanced the route map. Where does this corridor lead? To the physician's wing, specifically to Valana's laboratory. Jake felt a surge of certainty. 3 minutes. Just enough time to stop, inject the poison through the ventilation port, and continue on. The seal would still be intact. The container would look untouched, and the Queen would consume a lethal dose before anyone realized what had happened. We need to bring all 3 of them in for questioning immediately, but Jake's mind was already moving to the next problem. Why now? What changed? Torvak has served the Queen for 30 years. Something must have motivated him to betray her. The archivist was quiet for a moment, then pulled up another file. 3 months ago, Queen Solara announced a major policy change. She planned to open full diplomatic relations with humanity and several other younger species. She wanted to modernize the Empire's approach to trade and alliance building. Jake scanned the announcement. And Torvak opposed this? Many of the older advisors opposed it. They believe the Empire should maintain its traditional isolation. That newer species are too volatile, too dangerous. They fear change will destabilize everything the Valeth have built. So this was never just about killing the Queen, Jake said slowly. It was about stopping her vision for the Empire's future. If she died and the bonding was implicated, it would prove their point. Humanity's dangerous. New species are threats. The Empire should close its borders. A political assassination disguised as an unfortunate accident, the archivist said, and 3 people willing to betray their oaths to make it happen. Jake gathered all the files they had compiled. We have enough evidence to bring them in. But we need to do this carefully. If they realize we're onto them, they might try something desperate. Or they might try to accelerate their plans. The archivist's skin had turned a dark, worried blue. If Torvak knows he is suspected, he still has access to the Queen. He could try to harm her directly. Jake grabbed his comm unit and contacted Vrax immediately. We found them. Torvak, Valana, and Marin. They're working together. I'm sending you all the evidence now, but you need to secure the Queen right away. Torvak still has access to her. Understood. I am on my way to the Queen's chambers now. Detaining Torvak is my priority. Wait. Jake thought quickly. If you arrest him directly, Valana and Marin will know we're onto them. They might have contingency plans. We need to take all 3 simultaneously. That will require coordination. Can you detain Marin? He should still be in the administrative wing. Lisa and I can handle it. Just make sure the Queen is safe first. Rack's response was immediate. Security teams are being deployed now. No one enters or leaves the royal chambers without my direct authorization. Jake turned to the archivist. I need you to lock down these files. No one accesses this information without the Queen's explicit permission, and if anyone tries, I want to know immediately. She worked the console, implementing security protocols. It is done. These files are now sealed at the highest level. Thank you. Jake headed for the door, then paused. You may have just saved the Queen's life. The Empire owes you a debt. I simply did my duty, she replied. Though I will admit, this was more excitement than I typically experience in the archives. Jake managed a brief smile despite the tension. He hurried through the corridors, contacting Lisa as he moved. I found them. 3 conspirators working together. I need you to help me detain one of them before they realize we're onto them. Where and when? Lisa's response was immediate, professional, administrative wing. Junior advisor named Marin. He's probably in his office or the supply coordination center. We need to take him quietly. On my way. Meet you at the north entrance to the administrative section. Jake picked up his pace, his mind still racing through the implications. 3 people from different departments all coordinating to assassinate the Queen. How many others knew? How deep did this conspiracy go? Were Torvak, Valana, and Marin the leaders or just the operational team? He reached the north entrance at the same time as Lisa. She was armed and alert, her military training evident in every movement. Ready? Ready. Let's go get him. They moved through the administrative wing with purpose, drawing some curious looks from palace staff but no serious challenges. Jake had the Queen's authorization token, and Lisa's security credentials marked her as diplomatic protection. Together they looked official enough that no one questioned their presence. Marin's office was on the 3rd level, a small space filled with holographic displays showing supply chains and logistics networks. When they entered, they found the junior advisor at his desk, reviewing what looked like routine inventory reports. He looked up as they entered, and Jake saw the micro-expression of fear flash across his face before Marin regained control. Jake Morrison, Commander Grant. To what do I owe this visit? We need to ask you some questions, Jake said calmly. About supply requisitions you made 3 months ago. I handle hundreds of requisitions. You will need to be more specific. Chemical preservatives. A large order that went into storage and then disappeared from the logs. Marin's skin shifted subtly, a color change most people would miss, but Jake had been watching for it. The junior advisor was scared, but he was also calculating his options. I am sorry, but I do not recall that specific order. Perhaps if you show me the records, I can refresh my memory. Lisa moved to block the door, her hand resting casually on her weapon. We'd prefer to do this at security headquarters, more comfortable there. I am quite comfortable here. Marin stood slowly. And I am not sure I appreciate being questioned like a criminal. I have done nothing wrong. Then you won't mind answering our questions, Jake said. He pulled out his scanner and set it on the desk. This device detected traces of synthetic poison at 2 crime scenes today. Both attempts on Queen Solara's life. I think if we scan this office, we'll find matching traces. You have no authority to scan my personal workspace. Actually, Jake pulled up the authorization token. I have the Queen's direct authority. So we can do this easy or hard. Your choice. For a long moment, Marin just stared at them. Then his skin shifted to a resigned gray. I want to speak with legal counsel before I answer any questions. That's fine, Lisa said. We can arrange that at security headquarters. Let's go. As they escorted Marin through the corridors, Jake's comm unit buzzed with a message from Vrax. Torvak has been detained. He did not resist. Villana is also in custody. All 3 conspirators are secured. Jake felt relief wash over him. They had done it. Stopped the assassination plot. Saved the Queen. All before anyone else could get hurt. But as they delivered Marin to the security teams and watched him being led to a holding cell, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. 3 conspirators caught. The Queen safe. The evidence overwhelming. It should feel like a victory. So why did his instincts tell him they were missing something? The interrogation rooms were utilitarian compared to the rest of the palace's elegant design. Smooth gray walls, simple furniture, and observation windows that allowed security staff to monitor multiple conversations simultaneously. Jake stood in the observation room watching all 3 suspects through separate windows. Torvak sat calmly, his hands folded on the table. 30 years of service had given him a certain dignity even in custody. Villana seemed nervous, her skin shifting through various shades of distress, and Marin simply looked tired, defeated, as though arrest was a relief after months of stress. They are not talking, Vrax said, standing beside Jake. All 3 have requested counsel and refuse to answer questions until their legal representatives arrive. That's their right. Jake continued watching them, but body language tells us plenty. Look at Torvak. He's calm, confident. He doesn't think we have enough evidence to convict him. We have the access logs, the research queries, the timeline. A Valeth court will find that compelling. Maybe. But Jake had spent 15 years studying behavior across species. Torvak's confidence bothered him. Unless he thinks someone else will take responsibility. Unless he's not the mastermind. Lisa entered the observation room carrying a datapad. I've been reviewing the evidence we compiled. It's solid, but there's something odd. All 3 suspects acted independently in their roles. Marin handled procurement. Villana did the synthesis. Torvak provided the medical knowledge, but there's no evidence they communicated directly with each other. Jake turned to face her. What do you mean? I mean, Lisa pulled up communication logs. We checked their personal messages, their official correspondence, even their movement logs to see if they met in person. There's nothing. No connection between them except their normal professional interactions. Vrak's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. That is unusual. A conspiracy of this complexity would require coordination, planning, multiple conversations to ensure timing and execution. Unless someone else was coordinating them, Jake said slowly. Someone who communicated with each conspirator separately. Someone who kept them compartmentalized so if one got caught, they couldn't reveal the others. A handler, Lisa said. Classic intelligence operation structure. Each operative knows only their piece of the mission. But who? Vrax pulled up holographic displays showing palace personnel. Who has the access, the authority, and the motive to orchestrate something this elaborate? Jake turned back to watch Torvak. The physician sat perfectly still, his eyes closed as if meditating. And then Jake noticed something. Torvak's hands, folded on the table, were positioned in a specific way. 4 fingers interlocked in a pattern Jake had seen before in his studies of Valeth culture. It was a signal. A subtle gesture used in traditional Valeth communication, predating their modern technology. It meant patience. Trust. He's signaling someone, Jake said. Look at his hands. Vrax leaned closer to the window. That is an old gesture. Very old. Few people even remember its meaning anymore. But someone in this palace does. Jake pulled out his scanner and began reviewing the observation room's network connections. Can you tell me who has access to these observation feeds? Security staff, administrative personnel with clearance, and senior advisors, Vrax listed, perhaps 40 individuals total. Can you pull up logs showing who has accessed these feeds since we brought the suspects in? The security chief worked his console, and a list appeared. 17 people had checked the feeds in the past hour. Most were security staff doing their jobs, but one name stood out. Kelrus, Jake said, the senior advisor who helped us earlier. He's been watching these rooms continuously since the arrests. Kelrus has been with the palace for over 40 years, Vrax said. He is one of the Queen's most trusted advisors. Surely you do not suspect him. Jake pulled up Kelrus's file and began cross-referencing his activities with the timeline of the conspiracy. He was present at every major planning meeting for diplomatic events. He had input on the bonding ceremony. He knew about the feast schedule weeks in advance, and Jake's eyes widened. He was the one who recommended Marin for his position as logistics coordinator 8 years ago. That could be coincidence, Lisa said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe it. Jake kept digging. 3 months ago, when Queen Solara announced her plan to modernize the Empire's foreign policy, who led the opposition in the advisory council? Vrax checked the records. Kelrus argued most strongly against the changes. He said opening relations with younger species would destabilize the Empire. He presented historical data showing that rapid expansion had led to conflict in other civilizations. And when his arguments failed and the Queen moved forward anyway? Jake asked. Kelrus accepted the decision. He continued his duties as always. There were no incidents, no conflicts, because he moved to a different strategy. Jake pulled up communication logs. Look at this. Kelrus sent private messages to both Torvak and Marin within days of the Queen's announcement. Encrypted messages using old Valeth communication protocols that most modern systems don't even flag as unusual. Can you decrypt them? Lisa moved closer to examine the data. Vrax worked the console. These protocols are ancient. It will take time to break the encryption. We don't have time, Jake said. If Kelrus realizes we're investigating him, he'll either run or try to finish what he started. We need to confront him, now.
With what evidence?
Vrax's concern was evident. Old messages we cannot read. The fact that he recommended someone for a job? No Valeth court would consider that sufficient for accusations against the senior advisor. Jake thought quickly. Then we force his hand. We make him think the conspiracy has succeeded. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Explain.
We tell Kelrus that one of the suspects has confessed.
That they've implicated him as the mastermind. We watch his reaction. If he's innocent, he'll be confused, defensive. If he's guilty, he'll either try to run or try to silence the confessor. That is extremely risky, Vrax said. If you are wrong, you will have wrongly accused one of the Queen's closest advisors. If you are right, you might provoke him into another attempt on her life. Which is why we need the Queen in on the plan, Jake said. We stage it carefully. Make Kelrus think he has an opportunity, but control every variable. It's a trap, but one that will give us the proof we need. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, considering the risks. Then Vrax straightened, his military bearing evident. I will present this plan to Queen Solara. If she approves, we will proceed. But Jake Morrison, if this goes wrong, the consequences will be severe. I understand. But doing nothing means Kelrus remains free and dangerous. He's already shown he's willing to sacrifice his own people to achieve his goals. We can't let him try again. Vrax left to brief the Queen, and Jake turned back to the observation windows. Torvak's hands remained in that patient gesture. Volana had started crying, her distress overwhelming her composure, and Marin simply sat with his head in his hands, the weight of his choices crushing him. 3 people who had betrayed their oaths. 3 people who had tried to kill their queen. But none of them were the real mastermind. They were tools, used and discarded by someone who remained free. For now. Lisa stood beside Jake, both of them watching the suspects. You really think this'll work? Getting Kelrus to incriminate himself? It has to. Because if it doesn't, we're back to square one with a clever enemy who knows we're onto him. No pressure then. Jake managed a tired smile. Just another day saving the galaxy. She laughed softly. Is that what we're doing? Apparently. He glanced at her. You ever think when you signed up for diplomatic security that you'd end up investigating assassination conspiracies on alien worlds? Can't say it was in the job description. But then again, nothing about First Contact has gone the way anyone expected. That's the truth. Jake's comm unit buzzed. It was Vrax. The Queen has approved your plan. She will meet with Kelrus in 1 hour. You will have that time to prepare the scenario and position your people. Understood. We'll be ready. As Jake and Lisa left the observation room to begin preparations, Jake felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle over him. This plan had to work. There were no second chances. If Kelrus suspected a trap, he would disappear into the bureaucratic structure of the palace, and they would never prove his involvement. But if the plan worked, they would expose a traitor who had nearly destroyed everything Queen Solara was trying to build. They would save the alliance between humans and Valeth. They would prove that humans could be trusted partners in this dangerous galaxy. 1 hour to catch a mastermind. 1 hour to finish what they had started in that great hall when Jake stepped forward to stop the Queen from eating poison. 1 hour to show that Earth's Deathworld heritage had prepared humans for exactly this kind of challenge. The clock was ticking, and Jake Morrison was not about to waste a single second. The Queen's private study was smaller than Jake expected, more intimate. Books lined the walls, actual physical books alongside holographic displays. It reminded him that despite her advanced technology, Queen Solara valued tradition and history. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, designed for long hours of work and thought. Jake and Lisa had spent the past hour preparing every detail. They had positioned security teams at every entrance, though carefully hidden to avoid suspicion. They had set up recording devices to capture every word and gesture. And most importantly, they had briefed Queen Solara on exactly what to say and how to react. Now they waited in an adjacent room, watching through a concealed observation port. The Queen sat at her desk, reviewing documents as though this were an ordinary evening. But Jake could see the tension in her posture, the slight rigidity that betrayed her nerves. He is approaching. Vrax's voice came through their earpieces. Kelrus is walking toward the study. He appears calm. Good. Jake watched the door. Remember, Your Majesty, let him think you trust him completely. Make him believe you need his counsel. I understand, the Queen's voice responded. I have known Kelrus for many years. This will not be easy, I know. But it's necessary. The door opened, and Kelrus entered. His skin showed the calm blue of a trusted advisor. His posture relaxed. Your Majesty, thank you for seeing me at this late hour. I heard about the arrests. This must be a difficult time. Queen Solara gestured to a chair. Please sit. Yes, it has been a shocking day. 3 people I trusted, people who served this palace for years, conspiring to kill me. I find myself questioning everything. I can only imagine. Kelrus settled into the chair. Security Chief Vrax briefed the Advisory Council. The evidence seems overwhelming. But I must say, I never suspected Torvak. We have worked together for decades. Nor did I. The Queen's voice carried genuine emotion. That is what makes betrayal so painful. The ones closest to us, the ones we trust most, can cause the deepest wounds. Indeed. Kelrus leaned forward slightly. Have any of them explained why? What could possibly motivate such actions? Here it comes, Jake whispered to Lisa. This is where we spring the trap. The Queen's expression hardened. Actually, yes, Valana has confessed. She has told us everything. Jake watched Kelrus carefully. For just a fraction of a second, the advisor's skin shifted color, a brief flash of orange that indicated alarm before he regained control. That is good news, Your Majesty. The truth will help us prevent such things in the future. She said they were manipulated. The Queen stood and moved to the window, her back to Kelrus. She said someone else planned everything. Someone with deep knowledge of palace operations. Someone the 3 of them trusted enough to follow orders without question. Kelrus's hands tightened on the armrests, a subtle movement most people would miss. Did she name this person? She did. The Queen turned to face him directly. She named you Kelrus. The room seemed to freeze. Kelrus's skin went through several rapid color changes before settling on an angry red. That is absurd. Why would I want you harmed? I have served your family for over 40 years. My entire life has been dedicated to the Empire. Yet Valana was very specific. The Queen moved closer. She described meetings with you, messages you sent using old encryption protocols, instructions you gave to coordinate the timing of the attempts. She is lying, Kelrus stood abruptly. Or she is mistaken. Or someone is manipulating her testimony to discredit me. Your Majesty, I swear to you, I have done nothing wrong. Jake studied every micro-expression, every movement. Kelrus was scared now, genuinely frightened. But was it the fear of being falsely accused, or the fear of being caught? Then you will not mind if we examine your private communications, the Queen said. If you are innocent, the evidence will prove it.
Of course. Examine whatever you wish.
I have nothing to hide. But Jake noticed Kelrus's left hand moving subtly, fingers twitching in a pattern. He's signaling again, Jake said urgently. Vrax, check for any communication devices he might have on him. The security chief's response was immediate. Scanning now. Confirmed. He has a personal communication device active. He is sending a burst transmission. Block it, Jake ordered. Don't let it complete. Too late. The message has been sent. Damn. Jake moved quickly, bursting into the study with Lisa right behind him. Kelrus, who did you just contact? The advisor spun to face them, his expression shifting from shock to calculation. I do not know what you mean. We detected a transmission from your personal device. You just sent a signal to someone. Who? Kelrus's skin had gone a dangerous dark purple, a color Jake had learned meant desperation in Valith physiology. You set a trap for me. This entire conversation was designed to make me react. Answer the question, Lisa said, her weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. Who did you contact? For a long moment, Kelrus said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged and his skin shifted to a defeated gray. I contacted no one. The signal was automated, set to activate if I were ever questioned about the conspiracy. An automated signal to do what? Jake demanded. Kelrus looked at Queen Solera, and for the first time, Jake saw genuine remorse in the advisor's eyes. To activate a final contingency. If the conspiracy was discovered, if I was captured, the plan required a last measure. The Queen's voice was steady despite the fear Jake could see in her expression. The palace life support systems. Kelrus spoke quietly now, the fight gone out of him. I had modifications made 3 months ago. Hidden code in the environmental controls. That signal just activated a toxin release into the Royal Wing ventilation system. It will take approximately 5 minutes to reach lethal concentration. Jake's blood went cold. You're bluffing. We would have detected modifications to the life support systems. Would you? Kelrus smiled grimly. I have been managing palace operations for 40 years. I know every system, every protocol, every blind spot in your security. The modifications were made by maintenance teams who thought they were installing routine upgrades. Vrax was already on his comm unit barking orders. Seal the Royal Wing. Emergency evacuation protocols. Get environmental teams to the life support controls immediately. It will not work, Kelrus said. The system is designed to resist shutdown commands for 5 minutes after activation. By the time your teams override it, everyone in the Royal Wing will be dead. How do we stop it? Jake grabbed Kelrus by the shoulders. Tell us how to stop it. The advisor met his eyes.
You can't.
I designed it to be unstoppable. If the conspiracy failed, the Queen still had to die. That was the only way to preserve the Empire's future. No. Jake's mind raced. There had to be a way. Every system had vulnerabilities. Every plan had flaws. Think. What do we know about Valith life support systems? The Royal Wing holds 60 people, Vrax reported. Staff, guards, advisors. We are evacuating as quickly as possible, but some areas are locked down for security. How much time? Lisa asked. 4 minutes until lethal concentration. 3 minutes until serious symptoms begin. Jake turned to Kelrus. What toxin did you use? The advisor's smile was bitter. Something from your own world, actually. A modified version of a compound found in earth plants. Ironic, is it not? The Death World provides the means to kill its own advocates. Earth plants. Jake's mind clicked through possibilities. What kind of earth plants? There are millions of species. Does it matter? You cannot synthesize an antidote in 4 minutes. But maybe I can dilute it. Jake grabbed his comm unit. Vrax, can your environmental teams flood the ventilation system with clean air? Maximum flow? Overwhelm the toxin concentration before it reaches lethal levels? That would require opening external vents and creating massive air pressure, Vrax replied. It could damage the system. Better damage than everyone dead. Do it. Executing now. Jake turned back to Kelrus. Why destroy everything you've spent 40 years building? The advisor's skin shifted through several colors, emotions warring on his face, because the Queen was destroying it first. Opening our borders to younger species, bringing chaos and danger into our ordered society. Humans, with your violence and your unpredictability, the Carthex with their aggressive trade practices, all these species that do not understand our ways. So you decided murder was the answer? I decided preservation was the answer. If the Queen died, the Advisory Council would take control. We would return to the traditional ways, close the borders, protect what we have built. By killing innocent people, Jake's disgust was evident. By betraying everything the Empire stands for. I betrayed nothing. Kelrus's voice rose. I tried to save us from the Queen's naivety. She sees hope where I see danger. She sees opportunity where I see disaster. 2 minutes, Vrax reported. Air pressure is increasing, but the toxin concentration is still rising.
We need more time. Jake's mind raced.
The toxin was based on earth plants. That meant it worked on principles familiar to human biochemistry. What did he know about earth plant toxins? How they spread, how they bonded to oxygen molecules, how they could be neutralized. Wait. Jake turned to the Queen. Your Majesty, the bonding ceremony. It gave you human genetic markers. Does that mean your biochemistry now reacts like a human's to certain compounds? To some degree, yes. Queen Solara's eyes widened with understanding. You think the toxin will affect me differently than it affects full Valeth? Exactly. If Kelrus designed it to target humans specifically and you have human markers, you might be more susceptible. But Jake pulled out his scanner. That also means I might be able to design a targeted treatment. In 2 minutes? Lisa's skepticism was clear. I don't need a perfect solution. Just something to buy us time. 1 minute 30 seconds, Vrax reported. First symptoms are appearing in the royal wing. Dizziness, nausea. Jake's fingers flew over his scanner, pulling up everything he knew about earth plant toxins and their interactions with alien biology. There. Most plant-based poisons relied on disrupting cellular respiration. If he could provide an alternative oxygen pathway, even temporarily, it might keep people alive long enough for the ventilation system to clear. Your Majesty, I need your medical kit. The emergency one you carry for biochemical threats. Queen Solara moved quickly to a cabinet and pulled out a sophisticated medical kit. Jake opened it, scanning the contents. Valeth medicine was advanced, far beyond human technology in many ways. He found what he needed, a cellular oxygen supplement designed for emergency medical situations. This might work. He pulled out an injector and began programming it with new parameters. Vrax, tell everyone in the Royal Wing to stay calm and breathe slowly. Shallow breaths. We need to reduce their oxygen consumption until the air clears. 1 minute, Vrax replied. Toxin concentration is at critical levels. Some people are losing consciousness. Jake finished programming the injector and handed it to the Queen. Your Majesty, this will hurt. But it will protect you from the worst effects of the toxin for approximately 10 minutes. Enough time for the air to clear. The Queen took the injector without hesitation and pressed it to her neck. She gasped as the medication took effect, her skin shifting through rapid color changes, but she remained standing, conscious. It works. Her voice was strained but strong. Get this to everyone in the Royal Wing. We only have 1 dose, Jake said, but I can synthesize more. Vrax, I'm sending you the formula now. Get it to your medical teams. Have them produce it in bulk and distribute it immediately. 30 seconds. The security chief's voice was tight with stress. People are collapsing. We need that medication now. Jake transmitted the formula and prayed he had gotten it right. This was theory, educated guesses based on incomplete data. If he was wrong, he might have just made things worse. Lisa grabbed his arm. You did what you could. Now we wait. Toxin concentration is peaking, Vrax reported. Air pressure is at maximum. External vents are fully open. Medical teams are administering the oxygen supplement. Jake watched his scanner, tracking the air quality readings from the Royal Wing. The toxin levels were high, dangerously high. But they were starting to decrease as the clean air flooded the system. Slowly, too slowly. Come on, he muttered. Work. Please work. People are stabilizing, Brack's voice came through with a note of relief. The oxygen supplement is effective. Casualties are minimal. You saved them, Jake Morrison. Jake let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The room seemed to spin for a moment as the adrenaline drained away. They had done it. Stopped the final attack. Save the Royal Wing. He turned to Kelrus, who sat slumped in his chair. All fight gone. You failed. Your conspiracy failed. Your assassination attempts failed. And now you'll face justice for what you've done.
The advisor looked at him with empty eyes.
I already faced justice. I will spend the rest of my life knowing I betrayed everything I swore to protect. That is punishment enough. Queen Solara approached Kelrus slowly. You were one of my most trusted advisors. I valued your counsel, your experience, your wisdom. How could you do this? Because I believed I was right, Kelrus said quietly. I believed I was protecting the Empire. I believed you were leading us to disaster. I was wrong. I see that now. But at the time, I was certain. Certainty without humility is dangerous, the Queen said. You forgot that truth is found through dialogue, not domination. Through trust, not treachery. Security teams entered the study and took Kelrus into custody. As they led him away, Jake felt the weight of the past hours finally crash down on him. They had stopped an assassination plot, exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of palace administration, saved dozens of lives in the final moments. But the cost had been high. Trust had been shattered. The Queen's inner circle had been revealed to harbor traitors. The alliance between humans and Valeth had nearly collapsed before it truly began. Your Majesty, Jake said, turning to face the Queen. I'm sorry we couldn't prevent all of this. The attempts, the betrayals, the danger to your people. Queen Solera placed one of her hands on his shoulder. You have nothing to apologize for. You saved my life multiple times today. You uncovered a conspiracy that might have destroyed the Empire. You proved that humans can be trusted, even when those around me could not be. Lisa stepped forward. What happens now? Now we rebuild trust, the Queen said. We investigate thoroughly to ensure no other conspirators remain hidden. We strengthen our security protocols, and we move forward with the alliance we intended to build. Despite everything that's happened? Jake asked, especially because of everything that's happened. The Queen's expression was resolute. Kelrus was wrong about humanity. You did not bring chaos. You brought clarity. You did not bring danger. You brought protection. Your Death World heritage, as you call it, prepared you to face threats that my peaceful people could not even imagine. It's going to take time, Lisa said. Building trust after betrayal always does. Time we have. Queen Solara looked out the window at the palace grounds where emergency teams were still working to clear the air systems and treat affected personnel. This empire has survived for 3,000 years. We will survive this, and we will be stronger for it. Jake felt something shift in his chest. This was why he had come to the stars. Not just to study alien biology or represent humanity in diplomatic talks, but to prove that Earth's harsh crucible had forged humans into something valuable, something needed. They were survivors. Adapters, problem solvers who thrived in chaos and found solutions where others saw only disaster. That was the gift of being from a death world. Not violence or aggression, but resilience and creativity in the face of impossible odds. Your Majesty, he said, I think this is just the beginning of understanding what humans can offer the galaxy.
I agree.
Queen Solera smiled, the first genuine smile Jake had seen from her all day, and I look forward to seeing what else your people will teach us. As they left the study and made their way through the palace corridors, Jake reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. This morning he had been a nervous xenobiologist, hoping to make a good impression. Tonight, he was the human who had saved an alien queen and exposed a conspiracy that threatened an empire. Lisa walked beside him, her expression thoughtful. You know they're going to write reports about this. Lots of reports. We're going to be stuck in debriefings for weeks. Worth it. Jake grinned. Besides, think of the story we'll have. The day a human stepped forward in an alien hull and changed the course of history. You really think we changed history? Jake looked back toward the royal wing, where lights were coming back on as systems returned to normal, where people who had nearly died were now recovering, thanks to quick thinking and desperate improvisation, where an empire was learning that opening its borders was not a weakness but a strength. Yeah, he said. I really think we did. The palace gardens were peaceful in the late evening, the crystalline structures reflecting moonlight in patterns that seemed almost magical. Jake sat on a bench near a fountain, finally allowing himself to truly rest. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion and the odd clarity that came after surviving something traumatic. Lisa found him there carrying 2 cups of something hot that smelled faintly of cinnamon. Thought you could use this. The palace staff calls it restoration tea, supposed to help with stress. Jake accepted the cup gratefully. Thanks. How are the people from the royal wing? Everyone's going to be fine. Your oxygen supplement worked perfectly. The medical teams are calling it innovative thinking. She sat beside him. Brack says the Queen wants to give you a formal commendation. Great. More ceremonies. Jake sipped the tea. It was good, warming him from the inside. You know what the strangest part of all this is? That we're alive? That I came here thinking I'd be studying alien biology from a safe distance, academic research, maybe write some papers. And instead I ended up stopping assassination attempts and synthesizing emergency medicine. Lisa smiled. That's what happens when you put a death worlder in a civilized society. You break all their assumptions about what's possible. Jake considered that. Is that really what we are? Death worlders? Think about it. We come from a planet where everything is trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, weather, even the plants and animals we eat can be poisonous if we're not careful. We evolved to handle that constant threat. These Valeth, they come from a world where cooperation and order are the norm, where violence is rare and danger is minimal. They're not equipped to deal with this kind of malicious creativity, so we're naturally paranoid and suspicious. We're naturally vigilant and adaptive. Big difference. Lisa set down her cup. Kelrus assumed his plan was perfect because in his experience nobody looks for that level of deception. But you looked for it because humans are used to things being more complicated than they appear, used to being disappointed by people we trust, Jake added quietly. That too, but it's also what makes us good partners. We fill in the gaps. We see the threats they miss. We survive the impossible. She looked at him directly. Earth made us tough. Now we get to use that toughness to help others. Jake thought about that as they sat in companionable silence. Around them, the palace gardens bloomed with flowers from a dozen worlds. Each one beautiful, each one unique, each one contributing to something larger than itself. Maybe that was the point. Not that humans were better or worse than other species, but that they brought something different, a perspective forged in hardship. Skills developed through necessity, a refusal to give up even when all logic said the situation was hopeless. Commander Grant, Jake Morrison. Vrax appeared from the garden path, his skin showing the calm blue of satisfaction. The Queen requests your presence. There is something she wishes to show you. They followed the security chief back through the palace, not to the royal chambers, but to a balcony overlooking the capital city. Queen Solara stood there, looking out at the lights of thousands of buildings stretching to the horizon. Your Majesty, Jake said, bowing slightly. No more formality tonight, the Queen replied. Tonight we are simply beings who survived a threat together. Come, look at this view. Jake and Lisa joined her at the railing. The capital was beautiful, a testament to 3,000 years of peaceful development. Elegant structures that blended technology and nature, streets filled with beings going about their lives, unaware of how close they had come to catastrophe. I wanted you to see this, Queen Solara said. This is what you saved today. Not just the palace, but all of this. Millions of lives that would have been disrupted if the conspiracy had succeeded. Alliances that would have shattered. Trust that would have been destroyed. We just did what needed to be done, Jake said. That is what makes it remarkable. You saw what needed to be done and you did it, without hesitation, without seeking glory. That is the mark of true character. The Queen turned to face them. The Valeth Empire wishes to formalize our alliance with humanity. Not just diplomatic relations, but a true partnership. We have much to learn from each other. Your people might not all agree with that, Lisa said carefully. Kelrus wasn't the only one who opposed opening the borders. No, he was not. And there will be resistance. Change is always difficult, especially for a civilization as old as ours. Queen Solara's expression was resolute, but today proved something important. It proved that diversity makes us stronger. Human insight saved Valeth lives. Human creativity solved problems we could not solve alone. That is worth any temporary discomfort of change. Jake felt humbled by her words. We're honored, Your Majesty. Earth is eager to build this alliance. Good. Because I have a proposal for you personally, Jake Morrison. The Queen's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. I need an advisor who understands threats others cannot see. Someone who knows both human and alien biology. Someone with the courage to speak truth, even when it causes offense. I am offering you a position on my personal staff. Jake stared at her, stunned. You want me to stay here? At the palace? For at least the next year. Helping us establish security protocols that account for the new threats an open empire might face. Training our security personnel in threat assessment, serving as a bridge between human and Valeth perspectives. Jake struggled for words, that's not what I trained for. I'm a researcher, not a security consultant. You are whatever the situation requires you to be. Today you were a diplomat, a toxicologist, an investigator, and a savior. Tomorrow you will be whatever we need. Queen Solera smiled. Besides, you will have time for research. The palace has extensive laboratories, and the Empire has countless worlds with fascinating ecosystems for a xenobiologist to study. Lisa elbowed Jake gently. She's offering you the opportunity of a lifetime. Don't be stupid. It would mean leaving the diplomatic mission, Jake said. Changing my entire career path. It would mean pioneering a new career path, the Queen corrected. You would be the first human to serve in a senior advisory role to an alien government, the first to formally integrate Deathworld perspective into galactic civilization. That is not a small thing. Jake looked out at the capital again, at the lights, and the promise they represented. A year ago he had been on Earth, dreaming of the stars, hoping for a chance to be part of something bigger. And now that chance was literally standing before him, offering him a role he had never imagined. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course! Take the night. We will discuss details tomorrow. Queen Solara moved toward the door, then paused. But Jake Morrison, know this. You have already proven yourself. Not just to me, but to the Empire. Whatever you decide, you will always have a place here. You will always be welcome. After the Queen left, Jake and Lisa stood on the balcony in silence. The night air was cool, carrying scents from the gardens below. Somewhere in the city, life continued, unaware of the drama that had played out in the palace. You're going to say yes, Lisa said. It wasn't a question. Am I? Of course you are. This is exactly what Earth needs. A human showing the galaxy that we're more than just aggressive newcomers. That we can contribute, protect, build bridges. Jake sighed. It's a lot of responsibility. You stopped an assassination plot on your first day at the palace. I think you can handle it. She grinned. Besides, someone has to make sure these aliens don't get themselves killed. Might as well be you. What will you do? Go back to Earth. Write the most interesting security report in human history. Probably get promoted. Lisa's expression grew serious. But I'll visit. Someone has to make sure you don't forget where you came from. I could never forget that. Jake looked down at his hands, still steady despite everything they had been through. Earth made me who I am, the good and the bad. Mostly good, Lisa said kindly. The paranoia is what saved everyone today. They laughed, and it felt good, a release of tension that had been building for hours. The crisis was over. The conspiracy was exposed. The future was uncertain but bright with possibility. As they made their way back through the palace corridors, Jake made his decision. He would accept Queen Silera's offer. He would stay on this alien world and help build the alliance between humans and Valeth. He would use everything Earth had taught him, every skill forged in hardship to make the galaxy a little bit safer, because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived. They adapted. They protected. And most importantly, they proved that where you came from mattered less than what you chose to do with the gifts that origin gave you. Earth had given Jake Morrison the ability to see danger where others saw only beauty, to question where others only accepted, to act when others hesitated. Now he would use those gifts not for Earth alone, but for the wider galaxy. Not as a conqueror or a threat, but as a protector and a bridge builder. The man who stepped forward to tell the Queen not to eat poison food had changed more than just one life. He had changed the trajectory of two civilizations. And in the silent halls of an alien palace under the light of an unfamiliar moon, Jake Morrison embraced his new purpose. The Deathworld had sent its sun to the stars, and the stars would be better for it.